These are wolves, Canis lupus, one of the larger and more common canines native to Europe, Asia, and North America. Now, I'm sure we're all familiar with these big dogs and their many different subspecies, and some of you might be quite fond of these admittedly beautiful animals. Now, me personally, I don't have too strong of an opinion on them. I mean, sure, they're cool and I have nothing bad to say about them, but, they're not my absolute favorite animal either. I could take them or leave them. But that's definitely not the case for everyone. In fact, you know who loves wolves, are fascinated by wolves, are enamored by wolves, are obsessed with wolves? Yeah, you guessed it. Furries. Furries love wolves. They consistently rank at the top of the list for most popular fursona species. You'll see fursuits of them at furry conventions, art of them everywhere on social media. Heck, they even have that awoo thing going on for them, which should very much not be legalized. It was one of the first things that I realized when I joined the furry fandom, and as a feline who is very much on the outside looking in, I've always wondered why. I mean, really? A canine? Why would furries do that to themselves? Think about it. Of all the wonderful animals in the animal kingdom that furries could choose from, why did the fandom settle on wolves? What exactly makes these animals such a good fit for the fandom? What makes them stand out amongst all the other mammals that are out there? And of course, why do so many furries choose a wolf for their fursona species? In other words, why are wolves furries' favorite animal? Now, we've talked about popular things that furries like to do on this channel before. The first video that I ever made on this channel was a look into why furries love the color blue. In fact, in that same video, when introducing the whole concept of furries' obsession with blue, I said this. Think about how many wolves there are in this fandom. Blue wolves specifically, but we'll get to that part in a second. So we've hinted at this idea before, but the full version of the new Fursona starter pack is making some kind of blue wolf, and again, it's a bit of a meme in the fandom because it's kinda true. But even setting aside the blue part of things, wolves are still one of the most ubiquitous Fursona species in the furry fandom, which is significant because they stand out even amongst other canines in the fandom as well. Take a look at this chart from Furscience, which is a team of researchers who study the furry fandom. When looking at the most popular fursona species, 3 of the top 5 include canines, with wolves coming out on top for a singular species. They even beat out their closest rivals, foxes and regular dogs, by a good amount as well. Now, you might be looking at this chart and thinking, well, they don't beat out hybrids, right? But even if we look at the most popular hybrid combinations for fursona species, 4 of the top 5 include wolves as well. Now, that's just one survey with an admittedly limited data set, but I don't think anyone would dispute the idea that furries really like making wolf fursonas, which again is actually pretty interesting because it contradicts one of the main selling points that I personally like to attribute to the fandom: uniqueness. This fandom encourages everyone to be their unique and authentic selves and come up with characters and personas that portray what makes them special and use them for representation in the furry fandom. But that idea starts to be a little less convincing when statistically, 1 in every 5 furries you will ever come across will have a wolf as their fursona, and even more so if you include hybrid fursonas. So what is it about these big dogs that captured the imagination of such a large and diverse set of individuals in the furry fandom? Well, in order to find out why, we have to take a look at wolves from the perspective of what they are as actual animals, and specifically their historical and present-day relationship to us as humans. Because the more you understand that relationship, the reason why furries in particular love wolves so much also becomes a lot clearer. Let's start our investigation with a pretty simple concept. Humans have been familiar with wolves for quite a long time. Going back around 2,000 years ago, during the time of the end of the last ice age, humans and wolves were 2 of the most dominant predators in the northern hemisphere. Both amassed some of the largest territorial ranges as well, which led to them constantly competing for the same food. However, over time, instead of directly competing against each other for the same protein and fat-rich food, humans and wolves started cooperating with each other, each using their specific strengths to hunt more effectively, which allowed both species to feed themselves pretty comfortably. Now, the details of how specifically this partnership developed gets a little bit messy here, as there is still some indecision in the scientific community about how this all worked out. Some theorize that humans gave the leftovers of successful hunts to nearby wolf packs, while others theorize that wolves actually conned their two-legged competitors to giving them food by being obedient companions and willingly helping them hunt. But no matter how that relationship was established, the partnership between wolves and humans only grew stronger over time. This in turn led to the domestication of wolves, in turn creating the mini-wolves that were purposely bred for companionship that we still have today, otherwise known as dogs. So unlike other animals like big cats or bears or even foxes for that matter, humans have had a direct relationship with wolves that started as a necessity for survival and evolved into us breeding specific versions of them in a way that many would describe to be our best friends. But let's get back to the present here. Even though our relationship with wolves as a specific species has become more and more distant, our fascination with them has not only stayed with us throughout the generations, but has only gotten stronger over time. Wolves are interesting creatures, mainly because they are very dynamic animals in the sense that they can be attributed to a number of different personality traits. They fill a very interesting niche in humans' general fascination with animals, where they are secluded from our general society just enough that they retain a sense of mystique and wonder, but still have many traits that we are still familiar with and can relate to. One thing that I will give wolves is that you can take almost any personality trait and apply them to the species. Probably the most common personality that we attribute to wolves is related to the pack mentality, or the idea that wolves are social creatures that interact with one another in a group, all working together to ensure the pack not just survives, but thrives. But you can go the opposite direction as well and describe wolves as solitary creatures. The idea of the lone wolf literally describes wolves that live on their own and don't belong to any pack, but also can be seen as a personality trait for someone who tends to be more of a loner. And you can stretch the extremes of each of these ideas as well. You can think of wolves as cute, fluffy, and friendly, much like their smaller dog counterparts, or you can think of wolves as sinister, vicious, and mean, which they sometimes have to be when competing for food. In fact, if I were to give just one answer to why so many furries choose wolves for their fursona, it would be this reason right here. You could take a wolf, give it pretty much any personality you want, and it will work, almost naturally. No matter how you see or describe your ideal self, you can attach that personality to a wolf fursona and relate to it almost instantly, without having to do too much mental gymnastics to make it work. And this personality adaptability isn't some new idea. People who make forms of media know this as well, and wolves have been used to tell stories and create characters that people can relate to since basically forever. Whether it be books, TV shows, movies, and even advertising, wolves, particularly anthropomorphic wolves, have been used in all sorts of ways to capture our imagination in a story, or try to get us to buy things, especially when we were younger and more impressionable as kids. Personally, I remember growing up reading books like the Wolves of the Beyond series, and later on White Fang, one of my favorite books of all time. I remember watching movies like Balto and Alpha and Omega, one of those movies being a lot better than the other one. I'll let you guess which one. In fact, I also remember getting FOMO of everyone talking about this series called Twilight, only to realize people were more interested in the relationships the characters had, not them turning into werewolves, which disappointed me immensely. And I specifically remember this one thing growing up. It was a cereal called Cookie Crisp, which has an anthropomorphic gray wolf as a mascot. I always wanted to try some as a kid, but my mom would never let me because she very rightly pointed out that those ads were trying to get me to eat cookies for breakfast. Yes, that's right. The cereal and Cookie Crisps were actual cookies, and it was being sold as part of a complete breakfast. Yep, that's America for you. Anyway, the point is that using wolves in media works really well for capturing the imagination of potential audiences. And you don't even need to be all that familiar with the fandom to know that furries are exceptionally susceptible to anthropomorphic wolves in the media, and fall for them time and time and time again. So, when you combine the fact that humans have been interacting with wolves since the last ice age, the idea that wolves can be attributed to so many different personalities, and the exposure to particularly anthropomorphic wolves in the media that we've consumed since we were young, it's no longer such a big mystery why wolves are the top choice when it comes to fursonas in the furry fandom. They are just so compatible with what furries are all about, and they are a very natural choice for a lot of furries when choosing an animal species to represent themselves in the furry fandom. fandom. This also leads to some of the same community benefits and bandwagon effects that we talked about in the video about why furries love the color blue. The same thing applies here. New furries are looking to get assimilated into the fandom quickly, they see a bunch of wolf fursonas that they think look really cool, and they decide to make a wolf character to represent themselves. And it's not like this species' popularity doesn't come with some perks in the fandom as well. Because there are so many wolf furries, many artists know how to draw them pretty well, so you don't have to worry about getting art for your fursona and being concerned that your species is one your artist of choice isn't all that familiar with. The same goes for fursuits. I mean, let's be honest here. Not all makers can pull off a cat that looks as good as this, but a good-looking wolf, you're pretty much spoiled for choice when it comes to makers who are familiar with their anatomy, including new and upcoming makers just starting out. All in all, there's a good reason why 1 in every 5 furries you'll ever meet will have a wolf for their fursona. As much as it pains me to say this, and trust me, this does hurt to say, but after working on this video, I have to admit, wolves are pretty cool animals, and many furries in the fandom will tend to agree. Alright, that's enough. I'm way over my canine compliment quota for one video. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next one, but until then, stay wild out there. Peace.